one thing I wanted to show, when you're clipping dogs, any breed, if I'm doing my clipper work, I always want to make sure my opposite hand is on the dog's body. And what I'll do with my opposite hand is I'll pull the skin tight, and as I pull the skin tight, that gives me a smoother cutting surface, because most of the dogs will have little lumps or little rolls in them. So if I pull this skin tight and I cut through it with my snap-on comb, I'm going to get a lot smoother finish. That way you don't have to keep going over and over the dog. But another added bonus with these snap-on combs is if you get a dog like this, when you look at this dog up close, he's got a really thin coat. If you were to use a 4-blade, that's going to be a little bit shorter, and you'll make him a little bit too short where you're seeing a lot of skin. So with these snap-on combs, I can make it look more like he's got a scissor finish on him. So now I've got my body work done, so I'm going to come down. When I go to groom the inside of the back leg, I'm going to pick up the opposite leg, and I also hold the tail in my hand, because that tail always seems to find a way over to where your blade is. So I'm going to cut the inside of the leg, and then you'll get down to this spot where you can't get to the hock, and I'll usually just use my hand and lift the dog's leg off the table just a little bit so I can get to that area. And then the same thing as I'm cutting around this dog's foot, I'll just pick him up off the table just slightly so he's still in a natural position. And that'll allow me to get all around this dog's foot and cut this in nice and neat. Then I'll take the knee and I'll just give it a little bit of a twist so it sticks out. That way I can get in at this angle and cut that a lot easier.
These snap-on combs have saved us so much time in our shops because they do give a nice finish that you don't have to go over the dogs. So most of my standard poodles, it used to take me close to 2 hours to completely hand scissor the entire dog. I can use a snap-on comb on like a lamb, what I would call a lamb trim. I use a snap-on comb on the body. You can even go to a longer snap-on comb and do a lot of skimming on the legs, and then you just basically have to kind of touch up. You don't have to go over the work that you've already done.
Well, you'll notice even in this area, this is a real sensitive area. It's really easy to cut. So I'll take the skin and I'll pull it up tight. That way I don't have any chance of my blade catching that. And that allows me to be able to clip this dog's hair without having the chance of nicking it or cutting it.
These combs are also sold singly, in single packages also. Singularly, is that a word?
No. Okay, so now I'm going to check my work. I'm going to lift him up. Still going in the same direction that we have all over the rest of the dog's body. Just going to make sure from this angle when he stands up, because a lot of times, first thing you see when they leave the grooming shop, they stand up and they want to paw at their mama's sleeve or whatnot at their pants leg. So make sure all this is clean. Then I'm going to move to the front leg. And this is a trim you should be able to do pretty quick with these tools that we're talking about today. So make sure when you're doing the legs, I usually, especially if I'm going to do them really short, I'll hold the leg out as if he were moving towards me. So if he were running in motion, just pull that leg straight out. Then when I get to the foot area, I want to make sure I cut this, so I'll go up to his elbow and hold him by the elbow. That way I can get all across the top of that foot. Make sure you're really careful in this area. This is a really sensitive area and it's very easy to cut.
Now, the reason why you're hearing that little extra noise right there, especially going down where the dog is doing a little bit of jerking and going down the bone area, if the snap-on comb shifts a little bit and it's sitting as squarely on the blade as it should, you'll hear that noise. And actually it's like metal on metal, because the blade is actually, the snap-on comb is actually hitting the teeth of the blade. So sometimes you just have to stop and just readjust it a little bit. And it happens more on the closer blades. It very infrequently happens on the longer lengths. So it's usually the 4 snap-on comb that does happen with. But it's just, all you have to do is just readjust it a little bit.
Okay, I'm just going to switch to his other leg real quick.
Good boy, Rex.
And you can see I haven't had to take this blade off at all and clean out the hair in it. the hair basically just falls right out of this blade as you're using it. So it doesn't get clogged up like a lot of the snap-on combs on the market. They're very easy to work with, and it has saved me so much time as far as scissor work. I don't have to do much scissor work on my dogs at all now because I can use these snap-on combs.
And basically just do the feet and the head. And
yeah. And they start off, the snap-on combs start off pretty short. What is our shortest one?
It's the
red
number
one?
5, yeah, and it's 1/8 inch.
So it goes from 1/8 of an inch, which you can get a dog pretty short with that. And it goes all the way up to a number 1.
Well, it's actually the E, which leaves a 1 inch. So we have an E. The C leaves 7/8 of an inch. The A is 3/4 inch. And then we have the 0, which is probably my most popular. It's the one that I happen to use a lot. I like this on like standard poodle bodies. If I'm going to do a lamb trim, this is a really nice length, especially if you have a dog that tends to be a little bit on the thinner side. This gives a really nice plush finish. And this is a 5/8 inch. And then we have the peach or salmon color.
The peach. That's the one I use the most, is the peach.
The peach, that's a 1/2 inch. This is really good on a lot of your drop-coated breeds, like your Shih Tzus, Maltese, a lot of the drop-coated breeds that get the pet trims. The number 1 is a really nice maintenance trim. It leaves them looking nice and plush. It's a nice length. And then the number 2 is a 3/8 inch.
Now, one thing I wanted to show, when you're clipping dogs, any breed, if I'm doing my clipper work, I always want to make sure my opposite hand is on the dog's body. And what I'll do with my opposite hand is I'll pull the skin tight, and as I pull the skin tight, that gives me a smoother cutting surface, because most of the dogs will have little lumps or little rolls in them. So if I pull this skin tight and I cut through it with my snap-on comb, I'm going to get